So the three choices were fix national security, solve obesity, or solve incarceration. I tried to think about, what are the ways that I would tackle these issues? And the way I solved defense was I wanted to build a defense products company that upends the incentives that typically exist in the military industrial complex. But the prison one was that I wanted to basically take out the incentives of the private prison complex that exists today. Right now, private prison companies are growing. There's more and more people being housed in privately operated prisons. They're publicly traded. And those companies have a strong incentive to lobby for and perpetuate laws that incarcerate people for the longest period of time for the least serious crime. In other words, they don't want murderers and terrorists. They want non-violent drug offenders who will be in prison for a long time. And when they get out of prison, they want them to come back and be a repeat customer.
Right. They want good tenants. They want good, high occupancy, good tenants.
And the incentives they've set up with the government, where the government prepays for these beds, the government basically says, well, we've already paid for the beds, so if they're not full, then we're not locking up enough people. It's a very bad set of incentives. So my idea was that I could start a private prison company that would run as a nonprofit organization. And we would use the tax advantages of that to outcompete private prison companies. And more importantly, we would have a business model that would incent everybody towards the right set of incentives. So what I wanted to do was go to the government and say, listen, I'll lock up your prisoners, but you don't get to pay us up front. In fact, you can't pay us up front. You have to pay us after the person serves their term and then stays out of prison for 5 years. Then you're going to pay me. And the idea is that now all of a sudden I'm motivated, and my whole organization is motivated to get people through as quickly as possible, release them as quickly as possible, and then have them stay out of prison and not return to crime. And that would have been a game changer, and it would have been a very attractive business model to these governments that are always looking to delay their expenditures. The biggest problem that I ran into as I looked into this is it wasn't a technological problem. It was a lobbying and marketing and government affairs problem. And it wasn't at a federal level where you can basically convince a handful of people and then achieve success. It was going to be this locale by locale thing where you have a lot of people who depend on prisons for jobs. You have a lot of politicians who are very involved in it. And also the deals are not recompeted very often. This isn't like enterprise software where people are always on the lookout for a way to get an edge or move to a new provider that could reduce their costs or risk. It's like, we're going to recompete this deal in 35 years. And so it would have been this thing where I just couldn't have made an impact fast enough. And so I've been involved with other people who are making impacts in other ways. Okay, so that was one.
You couldn't just have like some Silicon Valley guy wearing like tight jeans and brown shoes like every other salesperson sitting down like, no. Hey, so we'd like to have a conversation about your prisoners. We'd like to have your business. Like, give me some of your guys.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. And the thing is, the people who make the decisions would not have benefited from us succeeding. So in business, look, and this is a big, we can get into this with Anduril too. One of the biggest problems with selling to the government versus businesses or private individuals, with private individuals and businesses, you just have to convince them that it'll be a good thing for them, and then they'll buy them. The people who are in charge of purchasing for government, they often don't benefit from saving money or reducing their manpower or any of this. Like, in many cases, the guy in charge of making the buying decision, his political power and earning power are directly tied to his ability to keep costs high and to keep manpower up and to not allow anything to displace that. So that was actually the big problem. I realized that it's nice to think you can solve any problem with new ideas through disruption, but some things are kind of self-reinforcing, very hard to fix.